Welcome back to Minus 16, the podcast where we talk about tech and, of course, the very business of YouTube. And those 2 weeks, where have they gone, boys? We are back in a flash, right? In a flash.
Yes.
So
happy Valentine's Day.
Tomorrow, isn't it? You're driving on Valentine's. We were just talking, Daniel's driving. In the UK, the amount he's driving tomorrow is just not probable to understand. He's driving for 9 hours. If we were driving for 9 hours, he would drop off the cliff.
No, I'm still in Australia.
That is a long drive.
I guess talking about love, we've got to say thank you to to all the viewers. So much love we've been getting on this channel. I know it's very early days. We have a lot of most of our all of our videos here are not funded by anyone. It's just literally by our passion for tech and stuff, and obviously your comments, your interactions. And the growth, I mean, it's not massive, but we're seeing it, and it's really giving us inspiration to keep going. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. It means the world. I think this year we will pass 1,000 subs on the channel, which will be a big old landmark.
Amazing. Joe Rogan, watch yourself, man.
Do you know, I know this is more like the business side we're going to get into later on, but I was listening to a podcast talking about podcasts, and actually we're performing pretty well because there's that point something of percent that gets the million downloads. Then there's the ones that get 3,000-4,000 are only about 1-2% globally. And we're up there video-wise, but the audios, because generally we're getting about 200 downloads per episode. And again, that puts us in the top 3-5% international down, because podcasts are a totally different beast to what we do. So we're actually beginning to perform pretty well. So thank you, everybody. Yeah.
I also like the suggestion that someone gave. It won't work today because you've got DDA or ADD. But if I was in the middle, it could be the dad podcast.
The dad podcast. Suggestion. Yeah, I know. Right. So gear-wise, I think there's a little bit coming up possibly for me, but there's been some really interesting videos for YouTube guys. So let's start off down on Samsung Street because. I know, Alex, I was watching one of yours about the 25 Plus at the weekend or early this week. And you seem
love it.
I mean, obviously very much this is with you as well, Daniel, but I mean, the big differences between that and the Ultra clearly are price-wise, but feature-wise, they look, most people would be very happy with the Plus, would they?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you don't get the pen, you don't get the amazing display. And I personally miss the 5X lens that you get on the Ultra. Apart from that, all the AI features are there, and it's a lovely display as well, even though it's not the most, the anti-reflective stuff is not there. I just love the sign. And I was talking to someone in person when I was testing this out, and they said that they like it because as an iPhone user, this was the path of least resistance, because it just feels, whether Samsung intended to do this or not, it feels like an iPhone. I love it.
I think the Plus and the base model, they have a different target audience compared to the Ultra. Like the Ultra it makes up most of 50%, I think, of all S series sales.
Oh,
whether
really?
that be last year. Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
Flagship, it's
leaned.
Oh, right.
Especially in the first 3 to 6 months of launch, it's pretty much Ultra, because it's usually when the loyalists, the Samsung fanatics, come and upgrade to it. And then you start to see the base of the Plus models increase and taper up a little bit sort of in the end of the life cycle or towards the back end of it. But they're different audiences. And I think you can see that Samsung know that, because the base and the Plus this year were, what's the upgrades? It's the chip basically compared to the S24 anyway. It's the 8 Elite for Galaxy. Outside of that, it's slightly lighter, slightly thinner, but they're the same phones. But that's because the people that buy these phones, they're not looking at a spec sheet. They're not reading that it's got the same 50 megapixel camera as 2 years ago. They're just going, my contract's up. What's the latest Samsung that's similar to mine? Great, I'll upgrade.
You mean they're not fussed about how big the milliamp hour battery is inside? You really don't stress about that?
Not even close. And I think the base and the Plus kind of represent just the everyday Samsung user who just is happy to have the brand, isn't bothered by what's inside it, and just wants the latest one that it's a reasonable price. And that's what they get. Whereas the Ultra is sort of pivots away from that a little bit.
And it's the same Snapdragon throughout the range, isn't it, this year? Is that right?
It is now,
yeah.
I was going to mention that because last year And it was actually a decent phone. And in a very specific scenario where I was struggling with the S24 Ultra, the S24 Plus actually did better. And that was a kind of an exposure thing just on the main camera. The Plus last year with the Exynos chip in Europe did a better job of that scenario. But yeah, I had really good response as well from my audience. So this year, I didn't buy it, by the way. Samsung sent me I have to send it back next week, by the way. But yeah, it's better now. So I think because that Snapdragon chip, whatever they've done here, seems to be amazing. And even though it's a shame Samsung are not actually using, the latest tech in battery, for example, or the latest sensors in cameras, that chip alone seems to be doing a great job, because I know not everyone is getting like full day battery. I am consistently getting full day battery on the Ultra, which for me is enough, right? I mean, if it goes into the next day, I'm like, okay, well, that's fine, because I'm charging my device every night anyway. It's the anxiety I was getting on the S24 Ultra that I can't live with. It was really painful to get to 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Oh yeah, it's better now.
Yeah. And that's a chip issue, I take it, because I know you both moaned last year that the 24 wasn't as good as the 23.
Yeah, the chip enables what it seems to be, the 4 Galaxy part, which I think I've mentioned before. It's got like the vision upscaler for the display, which is allowing the display to draw less power. And there's other elements as well, like the bigger heat sink or the bigger vapor chamber, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of extra stuff that is kind of contributing to that battery not using as much power.
And there was something, because obviously at the moment I'm looking and refreshing all the time, waiting for the iPhone 4 SE to come out, which I think is going to be sort of 500 quidish. And I think would that be the base model Samsung S25 that's up against?
Yeah, that'd probably be up against the FE or the A56, which isn't out yet.
Even lower than the base. Because I was thinking about comparing that against the base S25.
So you're going to get it, are you, Alex? The SE when it comes out?
I'm getting the SE, yeah, definitely. I think it'd be good for comparison, but I'm not keeping it for sure.
I think on price, $499 US is about probably a little bit below the S24 FE, but it's bang on the A series, the A56. That's the value that Samsung, that's like the comparable. Obviously in performance, the iPhone SE wipes the floor, but
that must fit
the
in
other value.
I know that was the stories I made a short about it, actually saying that Apple were going to pitch it to go up against, and I think Google have got a phone at a similar price as well. So they're obviously pitching in for that lower end users. Again, like we were just saying.
Yeah, I honestly thought it was the regular S25, but yeah, I never reviewed the A series, so maybe that's something to try.
What modems does Samsung use? Are they Qualcomm?
Yes,
because
in the chip ones, I think in the chips that have Qualcomm in it, but in the other ones, I think they've got Exynos. And the ones that use Exynos,
because that's meant to be the big thing with the SE, that for the first time ever, Apple are going to use their own modem. Which is the big story. And apparently it's not going to be, they're quite prepared to admit it's not as good as the ones they're currently buying from Qualcomm, but obviously their long-term vision is to bring everything in-house. They've got Apple Silicon, they want to make now their own modems as well. So it's not going to go into a flagship phone yet, but I guess they're kind of almost beta testing it.
It's not as good as something that is already terrible, okay.
Well, yeah, actually...
I'm only speaking from experience. My signal on the iPhone isn't great.
Because I watched some of your shorts with your cool support to Apple this week about your iPhone. Definitely sounds like it was a Friday phone. I mean, it sounds awful.
Let's talk about that, because I thought I was kind of just me, right? It must be an unlucky thing, because it's so bad. And if this was Alex 4 or 5 years ago, I would have made a video about it now, just completely trashing the iPhone, completely going, the iPhone is terrible. But funnily enough, as I posted that and I started talking to more people, and this happened whilst I was at Samsung's office last time, which, is a bit sus, but it was in my pocket, the iPhone. And I just felt this like, oh my God, usually when there's something warm in my pocket, it's not because I'm looking at some tech. So,
subscribe.
Anyway,
for our PG podcast that's coming out next week.
Extremely hot, hotter than usual. And I was like, I showed it to people. I was like, I'm not making this up. There was no apps running, the camera wasn't on. I didn't leave anything like playing in the background. It was literally out of nothing. I don't know, maybe Samsung has got some some hackers like targeting it. I don't know. But anyway, it happens all the time. The only time I was able to capture it on camera was when it rebooted itself and I was driving. Literally, it was dark. I was in an unfamiliar location. It was actually quite dangerous. I had to stop the car and my son was with me and I was like, pull out your iPhone 13 mini and record this for me. And and we captured it. It was like, it literally just froze on the map. All I had running was the Maps app. And it crashed and then rebooted itself. And it is laggy and it's just slow. Anyway, I opened a support case. First thing they asked me to do, which is fun, right? They always do that. It's like, have you rebooted it? And I worked in IT, and it is the first thing you got to ask people to do. It's like, restart your iPhone, and then went through the whole thing. You have to reset it, start again, and then I was running 18.2, iOS 18.2. I set updates to 18.3, and it's been 48 hours. I don't have my SIM on it yet. My SIM in it. It's just running in the background here. I'm running WhatsApp and some stuff. It seems fine, but I need to give it maybe a couple of days of actually put my SIM in it and use it properly. But
I mean,
not holding my breath.
All the issues you've had. I mean, and again, this isn't me. I'm only speaking as a fan. I've not had any issues with the 16 this year at all. The Pro Max is behaved exactly as I would wish it to be. The battery's kind of okay. Yeah, it could be better, but it's not terrible. And I've certainly not had any issues with getting randomly hot or rebooting
So Mark Ellis, I was just chatting to him on WhatsApp an hour ago.
Yeah.
And he said, have you managed to fix your thing? Because he actually tried turning off Apple Intelligence and he seemed to improve a little bit. But now he's saying it's just back to being trash. So I'm definitely not alone. But yeah, some people may not see. Some people will be absolutely happy with it and fine.
So what I'm hearing is turn on the notification bell for Alex's videos because there may be one coming.
There'll definitely be one coming. Whether he fixes or not, there will definitely be a review. Because
there's a story there, yeah.
I've got to compare it to the S25 Ultra, and I just didn't want to be unfair and just be a cheap let's trash the iPhone for the sake of it.
That's kind of the great thing with what we do that I found out to my expense a year or so ago. Even if something bad happens that you waste a whole day trying to sort, there's a story in it, there's a video in it, there's something there. Your eyes are open, think there's content there, and obviously you can turn
absolutely. Everything is content.
Everything is content. Nothing's safe. And of content over the weekend, Daniel's videos always pop up on a Sunday lunchtime for us here in the UK. And your one actually made me stop and just sit and watch it. I grabbed a coffee. You were really impassioned. I think the video is called something along the lines of "If This Was Apple."
I love that video. Yeah.
So much passion in it. And I was sitting there watching it, and I was hearing very much what you were saying. I was looking forward to having a chat with you about it because that over on Apple Land, we get a lot of heat every year. It's the same phone, nothing's changed. So we've been taking that flag. I think the first point I was going to start with you, and I don't know if it's a fair point or not, is it that Apple was the first? They kind of made the smart moment. After the BlackBerry thing died, Apple were the first to get their foot in the door, and everybody has followed on. And yes, caught up. I'm not saying there's nothing between the top three now. That's a given. But is it just that kudos? Apple have managed to, with very clever marketing, create this brand that we want to ascend to. And is that part of it, that the others aren't ever going to quite have that kudos?
Yeah, the whole we were there first, and then we've got the biggest army of followers definitely, I think, plays a part in the apologetic nature that they sort of get whenever they release something. Especially when it comes to hardware, because a lot of people tend to just overlook the fact that, Apple don't release battery stats, they don't release how much RAM they have. That's kind of stuff that people investigate and find out on their own. And then everyone just kind of glosses over that fact. Like I'll get to another point in a minute, but when you open up an iPhone and they've got a battery that's 4,500 milliamp hours, the phone is thicker and heavier than pretty much every other Android flagship. How is there not more space that they've got internally to push that a little bit further? And we know why. It's because they don't need to. They know with their chip and their iOS and the optimizations that they have, and the fact that if they don't put a bigger battery, they can, have somewhere to go to later. They're like, oh, look, we've got a 5,000 milliamp hour battery in 3 years' time. Everyone's going to clap for us. They kind of have that room to grow. But there's another element that someone mentioned in my comments, which I thought was quite interesting. It's because in Android land, you've got other hardware manufacturers to compare, an extra choice that sort of forms part of the Android ecosystem. Whereas on iOS, yes, there's still a smartphone, it's still a category of product, but there's nothing really there's no comparison to be made. So they're not playing in the same space, or they're not competing against anyone else because they're really by themselves. So they can do whatever they want, and there's no, well, this device running iOS has this capacity because there isn't one. So that's kind of what I have sort of in like two sections have kind of summed up that, yeah, what you said as well, but then also the fact that they're kind of running their own race and not too bothered what anyone else is doing.
Yeah, I mean, because as you say, iOS and iPhone are the only sole runner. They haven't got, and that possibly is to their detriment because they're not having to look over their shoulder so much. And that possibly is where some of the innovation is lacking, because they know that their brand is solid. They know that it's still an aspirational brand. They know that they can charge top dollar and get away with it every single year. Whether within
there's sorry to cut you off there.
No.
But I just think there's a third element as well of Daniel touched a little bit on there on, the army of people who are, channels that are, mostly positive about Apple and fair play, right? I mean, there's a lot of business sense if you're an Apple focused channel to just, be loyal and kind of embrace. And some people are truly passionate about the products, whether they're bad or not. But what I see, and I've seen now, especially in the last 2 years, where I've got a relationship with not just Samsung, but other brands, and how I'm able to their face, not just in my videos, but in person, say to their representatives, their brand, people who work for the brand, and say to them, actually, this is shit, and not feel that
there's pressure on
scared that they're not going to call me back, or they're not going to, engage with me going forward. I think that's a key difference in terms of Apple and others. I feel that, and I've seen other creators, obviously Apple haven't contacted me, I'd say yet, because, one day they might have to, but they haven't engaged with me because they know that I've been so vocal about, especially when there's a negative point.
I said it in my video, that's pretty much that point, that it's easier to criticize Samsung in a review and on YouTube and in journalist articles.
They're open to it, yeah.
Than it is to criticize iPhones. I think the biggest point I saw with this is The Verge put out, like, you see their iPhone 16 Pro review headline versus the S25 Ultra review headline. And one of them is praising like hardware refined and talking about how polished everything is. The other one is calling Samsung boring and lazy. And like that difference for me is exactly why I made the video, because that is what gets pushed out whenever Apple do something just like a camera button, and Samsung drastically reduced the weight, changed the shape of the phone, and it's the same. It's an S24 Ultra. I'm like, that just didn't sit right for a bit.
I mean, first of all, it's odd that The Verge, of all people, because I respect them as journalists and they're factually generally very good. So for them to
and
get
Marquez as well, we've got to. I love the guy, but.
Yeah.
It's so obvious now. It's ridiculous.
Well, I was just going to, we'll get to him in just a moment. But finishing up with The Verge, for them to turn around and say that Samsung's being unimaginative and not, that seems just blatantly wrong. Yes, some of the changes this year are minor, but we all know that these things are kind of getting to their zenith now. There's a limit to how much more we can genuinely expect, certainly year on year. And so for them to turn around and say, well, the iPhone is far more innovative than Samsung, that just seems plainly factually incorrect.
But I think it goes back to the whole Samsung get measured against other Androids. iPhones don't get measured against anything. So like Samsung's got to get measured against OnePlus, against Vivo. And yes, hands down, they are pushing out hardware that is probably the future of what the phone industry will have. Like the silicon carbon battery, and
actually, yeah,
like that's going to happen. But I think they are pushing it out. They're doing what Samsung used to do, which is pushing it out as early as possible, but at the sacrifice of the experience, maybe of the software or the cameras or the ecosystem. Whereas Samsung have kind of pivoted their approach to focus on consumer experience a little bit more.
That's what came, when you were in the States, it very much came back that's what they were doing. They got you guys out there very much. And when you were in London as well, Alex, but it was very much, right, we want to hear your feedback. What's the real world like? What's the usage like?
Well, I don't think they are that forthcoming for me, but the watch, for example, is a good example, right? I actually bought the watch myself and I sent it back after a few weeks because I saw no difference, and I didn't even do a video because I was like, there's no difference in my experience with the Apple Watch Ultra, and which I didn't warrant a review either. After, I think the first one I did, not the latest ones, because it's like, it doesn't work for me on a day-to-day because the Garmin exists, and that and I prioritize battery over everything, all the smartwatch features. But I did say to Samsung that was my experience, even though they didn't ask for it. And a few weeks ago, they said, "Look, we released an update, and we think you're gonna like it. Would you like to try it again?"
The update's been great for me.
Okay, I don't think any other brand would do that. To come back to me, first of all, they remembered that I complained about it. I didn't even make a review about the thing, and they said, "All right, give it another go and let us know." And it's better. I can actually go almost 2 days now, whereas before it was like a day and a half. So when I'm really active, and I use it for sleep tracking, it does last longer now. So fair play. I think that there's that element as well. That sometimes they don't ask, but if you mention it and if you say and if you're serious about it, they probably know deep down what the actual issues are because they're testing it themselves. So I think they are more open to honest feedback, and of course they're probably more open to positive reviews because ultimately selling their products. But I like the fact that I can go to their faces and say this isn't quite there yet, or I'm personally not happy with this.
David, I'm interested to hear what you like. If this came out as an iPhone, what would your thoughts be towards the hardware?
I've watched a load of videos on it. And
hard question.
Yeah, it is. But equally, I've made a big point of saying on my channels and on here as well that I'm not here to bash it. Yeah. I had a bit of experience with Google and I loved it. It was a really, I had a fun time, and it was probably more of a business decision.
And the Nothing phone as well, right? You tried?
Yeah, I was I had the Nothing, and but particularly the Google, I guess because the Pixel Pro was another flagship. It was, I really enjoyed it. And I've never used a Samsung, and I kind of regret that because I was so for a long time. I think they look really freaking fantastic. They look beautiful phone. If that come out, with that camera layout, the thickness of it, the squared edges, the anti-reflective glass sounds like it's kind of leading the way.
Amazing.
So it clearly features. I mean, okay, then the new audio features, we've got that, and the log thing. But that, again, that's not scoring points. It's just they have to go the log route because they know that the iPhone for a long time has been the stay of videography. It was a no-brainer. That was a sensible thing for them to do. But I dare say Samsung's is now equally as good. Okay, so Apple happened to have it a year or so earlier. You had plenty of other features earlier. So I would love to get my hands on a Samsung and use it. I really would. It looks a lovely device. Okay, I'm not very fluent in Android. It would take me a while to get used to the UI, but I'm sure I'd get my head around it fairly quickly. But I think they look a really premium device. I mean, where Apple's been clever again is with their retail. They've got these beautiful retail stores that, again, look very aspirational. You go in and everything's kind of just perfect. It's this sea of beautiful, isn't it? And it makes their products look desirable. Whether you actually want something, you generally come out with something because it just looks so good. So
and they built something that it's gonna take generations to change, which is that stickiness to their ecosystem, right? Whether we like it or not. I think it was on Twitter, someone commented on my video because I said, I can't believe people are still buying the iPhone just because of the iMessage thing.
I saw, that tweet,
And I was like, that can't be true. But yeah, it is. Some people are saying, to communicate with my family and friends, I don't want to be the one with the green bubble.
Particularly in the States, so apparently. Is WhatsApp big in Australia?
Yeah, WhatsApp's quite big here. Like I'm coaching my son's under 8s team, and we've got a WhatsApp chat.
Because apparently in the States, WhatsApp just doesn't exist. And so that's
it's
why,
crazy.
yeah, it's weird. And that's why so many, because I think, the statistics are huge.
I think it does. Yeah, I think it does. But it's
not a
iMessage
go-to.
is iMessage. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's got that. It's so rooted into the.
And they get them young, 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
They get their first iPhone with iMessage. They got their iCloud account. They got all their photos in the iCloud, and suddenly they're locked in, and they've got iMessage.
And there's so much that Apple are doing. If you watch Apple TV, right, every program like Ted Lasso is a good example. Very popular across all ages, and every single scene has some sort of Apple computer, tablet, iPhone. There's a lot of subliminal, bombarding of marketing. Very clever. So it's gonna take a long time to change that. And even though we can now use RCS and all that, it's still
Yeah.
I was gonna say there's been a slight loosening of the grip on the ecosystem from Apple. Like you mentioned, Apple TV
now on Android, yeah.
probably yesterday, right? They actually used good Android products as the face of it. Like I think it was a Tab S9 and a Google Pixel 9 Pro, as opposed to their normal hideous notched and bezeled phone that they did for FaceTime. But I think it's because they actually want Android people to subscribe to it.
Yeah, well, that's why
they need to expand their user base.
Because they put Apple Music on PC, haven't they? And also we can set out FaceTime links now to Android users. So yeah, as you said, I think they're doing just enough to see if they can't tempt some Android users. Actually, this is I'd like to have a look at it, and just wheel them in slowly. That can be the only reason, can't it?
For me, it's AirDrop. AirDrop is more important than iMessage, but that is also becoming less and less of an issue now. I mean, yeah, it really depends where I am. If I'm in a location with low internet, I do miss AirDrop. But if I'm here in the studio, then I can, it's not great, but I can just use Google Photos to upload my stuff and download it, into Mac, because I still use a Mac for creative work. I cannot live without a Mac. If that changes, then I'd absolutely do it. But
and you brought up
still
Marques. We've got to be careful between Marques and Marques. They sound way too similar here. But MKBHD, let's put a line in the sand. So I got in touch with you guys on the group and said, have you watched his video? And I know, Alex, I think you came back and said, no, I want to stay dry from that. And no, I watched it.
I feel like I have, though, because a lot of people reference it in my comments.
Again, I've mentioned this. I'm a little turncoat. This time last year, I was massively into Marques. I think I had more respect for him than virtually any other creator because of his delivery. I liked the fact he was nice and dry. There was no music, there's no mucking about it. But then I think last year he kind of, for me, lost his way a bit. And, we have to remind ourselves the success he's had. He's still a fairly young man, and that can easily go to your head with that level of success. And I just think he's lost his way a bit. And I watched that review of the phone, and I just couldn't understand. There didn't seem to be a beginning, middle, and end. It seemed to be a little bit incoherent. And I didn't get where he was saying that it was a weak phone and similar to last year's. And yet, here, and I thought he was a Samsung user as well. I thought his personal phone was a.
Here's my thing. I mean, even the Apple reviews that I've watched, right? I watched the Mac Mini review, and that's the one that kind of riled me up a little bit, because it's like, and this was like, I don't care what the brand was. I'm just looking at the review itself. If I'm trying to buy that product, I don't want to know if it's pretty, if it's cute, if it's like, if it's small or whatever, or it's cheap. I know that. I can see that on the website. I want to see what you actually think of it. Have you used, and that's credit to him, right? He got to a point where it doesn't matter if he uses the product or not. He can say something and that's it. He killed a couple of brands with that just by like sharing his opinion. But where it matters, where I think it would really matter, is like, give us your honest, like, use the thing. I bet, I haven't watched the video, but I bet if I watch the video, I can probably see signs of lack of actual use of the S25 Ultra, because
smacks of it, yeah.
If you use the phone, even I, who's I'm trying not to be biased when I'm doing these reviews, but it's really, it reminded me of when I reviewed the S21 Ultra after years of not experiencing a Samsung. And I have used all the Samsung since then, right? It still felt like an amazing device. So I'm guessing he's used it in his studio, probably, in a couple of, like in the vicinity, like nearby. I don't think he's actually used it enough, because I don't know. I'm based on my experience, it's hard to fault it. I mean, it could be
When
better,
you-
sure, but so could
when
the
you-
iPhone, right?
When you're in the States, Daniel, he was there, wasn't he? For instance, we're not dunking on him.
I turned to the right and he was getting a photo with someone in the unpacked stage floor. And then I went to tell Danny, "Oh, look, there's Marquez." And then I turned back around, he was gone. I think
vanished
he
like that.
apparently doesn't like this, like being in the spotlight a lot. But I'm just going back to, because he would have reviewed the S24 Ultra at the start of last year and called it "Why Buy Anything Else?" That was the title of his review. And then this year he says these thumbnails has a big Ultra with the letter Ultra crossed out. And I think the phone is better than the S24 Ultra last year. So I don't know where that narrative has already shifted.
Yeah.
Because
And he
like
called
Alex
it
said,
the phone of the year as well, right? That was his phone of the year last year.
And this is better. Like this is better in every metric you can think of. Better performing chip. The display just got DxO marks #1 display in the world, even though it's an 8-bit panel and not a 10-bit.
Not that DxO
there's-
mark should be a reference, but yeah.
Not that, right. It's obviously not as reputable as it once was. But I mean, I just have to look at the
Still.
display to know that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I think like why, I think it's because it's kind of been popular to dunk on this phone in the first few weeks. And like if he leads that charge, maybe then that kind of
go, "I was
influences
wrong."
other people. Yeah. And then he could change his mind later once you
You're
use the
right
phone for
there.
more than 5 minutes.
A release tends to get a vibe on it, doesn't it? And if the first vibe
It does.
is cold, everyone just suddenly shits on it. And
Yeah.
it's hard to stop that flow then. Whereas if the first couple of reviews come out and everyone's like, yeah, you know what, this. Like, I mean, I haven't used them, but these new Beats headphones that come out this week, the vibe on it sounds fairly positive. And like, they can
So
be
that
fair-
one I watched, and yeah.
yeah,
I
I,
don't
know.
know,
Again,
man.
yeah, it was
The 250 quid pair of earbuds. Yeah, I want to try it myself just to see, but I can almost guarantee he's going to be just.
But why
mid.
does that get a review and not like
I was just gonna-
again,
right, so
Samsung,
that-
but he reviews that, but not the Buds
that
3
I was just
Pro
going to
from
lead into my
last
next
year, right?
question. So, do you think with those big players that there's some kind of not nefarious, but there's some kind of sweetening going on in the background where they'll always give preferential reviews to Apple? You said it with the Verge. Now,
If Apple
do you
sent
think
me those buds, I would have reviewed it, right? Let's be honest. That is why. I mean,
100%.
they are not being purchased by people. They've been saying, I honestly would have reviewed it. But it's
And
it's
the
one
reason
of the
why
things
is
that-
because you want that Apple train to continue. Like if you're part of that reviewer bubble, this is what I think. Again, I said this in my video. If you're part of that reviewer bubble, Apple don't take too kindly to negative criticism. So
You'd probably
if
be my
you-
first and last if I did.
right, you wouldn't get something again, or you'd stop being part of that review circle, and the interaction just becomes less and less and less. Obviously, you'd be a certain size, like Marquez would be probably big enough that he could say something negative and not be removed, but there's that balancing act that he has to play, where he maybe didn't want to review a pair of Power Beats 2, but because that's part of the Apple sort of mega corporation, then you kind of have to play the game,
again,
to
yeah.
make sure the other stuff keeps coming through. And because that's his most viewed content is Apple content, like by far, that's the stuff that gets the most views. So he kind of has to manage that relationship. And I don't blame him for that. It's just how it is.
which is bringing us very neatly around to getting to talk. We've got a lot to talk about the business. It's time is running away from us. There's so much to talk about today. I'm going to leave you two to have a quick chat because I found there was, you know what you said at the beginning, Alex, about channels coming onto your page that you weren't used to. A channel came up and I swear I thought it was Daniel's. The thumb, have you, I forget, it'll be on my
seen that
history.
one,
'Cause
yeah. They're
was
literally
it sort of
copying
Alex
this.
something? Or it was a Samsung. Have a chat, begin to talk about you. Let me just try and see if I can find it on my history because I'd love people to look at it. Hold on.
Okay.
Be about your business.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of segues into planning content, right? Like when you get a product or you get something handed to you or you've got a launch, what do we do? Like, how do we navigate that? Like you've been doing it a bit longer than I have, Alex. Have you kind of steeped into a rhythm a bit better now?
It's a constant evolution. I think I tried pretty much every single organization tool that's out there. It's, you know, as a solo creator, it's hard because you end up doing too many jobs, and it's, even though you want to be organized, there will be things that come out of the woodwork. Like this week is a good example where there's a rumor that there will be a new iPhone or a new iPad or both. and you kind of like, do I plan ahead? Do I do some research? So I think at the very least, you have to plan for the research for those things. Watch some rumor videos and stuff like that just to get ready, because if it does launch, then you have to make time in your schedule. I try to stay. I think now I've got a pretty good system, because working with a manager or someone whose job is to go and try and find sponsors for the videos, you're kind of forced to kind of plan ahead. So I have 8 weeks worth of videos, maybe 12, 13 videos in there, and just kind of say, I might not make all of them, but these are the videos that I would like to work on. And that's a good place to be, right? So that videos that you want to make, that you won't feel like
have the sponsors fit around the content.
You won't feel like a chore, right? Because where I was last year, the year before, I was responding to emails and then trying to see what content I could make to fit those brand deals. Mm-hmm. And that's not a good place to be, because you end up just making content that you don't really want to make. So yeah, I think it's a better place now. Although January, I think I did 8 videos just in the English channel alone with no sponsors.
Same.
So now I have to make some money to pay the rent here. But yeah, I think planning is, you have to do it. It's just something that you have to do. Otherwise, you will end up trying to wing it, and it's not a good place to be.
No, we were just talking. By the way, that channel is called Technically Alex.
Ah, yeah.
There's the one.
I'm aware.
I saw that thumbnail. I thought, no.
He changed the color. It's almost like copy my work, but at least make a little change.
Anyway, yes. I mean, I was going to talk a little bit later on about. I was talking to you guys just before we started about how things definitely changed for me this week. But one of the things that's changed is I was losing grip. I've run businesses since I was kind of 20, 21. So I'm used to organising and running a business and paying bills and paying VAT, blah, 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 blah. Something changed this week, and I just went down a rabbit hole, and I lost a grip on what I needed to be doing. I was worried I was going to lose track of which sponsor I need to follow up on, what rates I'd offer those sponsors. I'm in the position now where I've actually got 5 sponsors lined up between now and I think the end of March, which sounds the time, but it's not a lot. That's hardly any time. By the time you make the content, get their approval, but you know the drill. And I was getting really worried. So for the first time ever, I've had to look to an organisational kind of productive tool. And I think you said you used Monday. I stumbled across Trello and was using that. And
I think the tool is less important. I mean, you can do this in Notion, you can do this in Excel, you can do this in pen and paper or Post-it notes. But I think and this is early days for me, because I thought outside of YouTube, I work in a lot of software development related work. And we all work in something called Agile. I don't know if you've heard of the term, but it's basically a project management methodology, I guess you could call it. But they work in sprints of 2 weeks. And during these 2 weeks, you have a very clear goal, what you're going to achieve, and you kind of, on a daily basis, review what you're going to do before you start the work. And I thought, I might try this for content, because, it's just projects. And like you said, sometimes, you don't have just one thing going. You might have 5, 6 videos on the go. So I think it will help, just because if nothing else, right, at least it gives you a visibility of what you need to work on and maybe what you need to drop as well, and communicate with people and say, hey, that video is going to be late, or something else popped up. You got to have some way of controlling it. So I'm going to maybe give me a 2 or 3 sprints of that 6 weeks, see how I'm going then. But I thought I'd start that, because it's just a better way of just managing, especially when you start doing like multiple. Because when I was doing just 1 or 2 devices, it's kind of easier. Now I'm covered in iPhones and Samsung and a OnePlus, and I'm trying different brands, because I think it's good to try different things, but that does add to the content.
And Daniel, I mean, how do you arrange it and keep your head reasonably? Because obviously you've got Sam Mobile as well, haven't you? Now, I don't know how those lines blur for you between doubling up or not making the same content for both channels. I'm assuming it's a slightly different viewer base, but they've got to trip over.
There is a slightly different viewer base. I have noticed a couple of comments here or there that cross over, like, oh, this guy works for Sam Mobile, you can't trust him. I'm like, You do realize Sam Mobile is not Samsung. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I've got 2 Samsung Notes files. Or one, I've got in my Samsung Notes folder, like I'm a Samsung user through and through here. I've got a folder called Sam Mobile Reviews, and then I've got a YouTube folder for my channel. And I've got a document in each, especially for launch. I sort of get the phone and then I plan out 2 months worth of content. For Sam Mobile, it's 2 videos a week. And for my channel, I sort of stick to 1 video, but then I leave gaps in case I get inspiration, like what have they done to the S Pen, or, you know, what if this was an iPhone type content, and I kind of shoehorn that stuff in. But it's very distinctly different. Like the Sam Mobile one is a bit more sit down, chat, relaxed, whereas my content's a bit more stand and deliver. So I try and keep it different. There is some crossover with some of the videos that might be similar. Like I did a full S24 Ultra to S25 Ultra comparison on my channel, and then I did just the camera comparison on Sam Mobile. So they're still compared, but they're like different bits of content. Like, but it's, as far as sponsors go, I'm a mess. I have nothing to manage or keep a track of that, because one, I don't get enough requests, and when I do, I don't hear back from them. Like lots of companies I email my rates to, and then I don't hear from them ever again. And then for the ones that I do get back, I've got a very select few, and I have a video ready, or I kind of plan a video and go from there.
I had been using a spreadsheet, just keeping all contact names and who I've been dealing with and basic information like that. But then it just got to this tipping. I don't know why it was this week, but I just felt I was losing it. I think for the first time ever, it's because I've got a few backed up. And I had a meeting with one this week. It was a really complicated meeting about the content I've got to make this weekend for them. And I came off that feeling more confused than when I went into it. And I think that just added to the whole mire that I was feeling I'm losing control here, and I needed to do something.
It's a normal thing. It's a good sign, right? Because it means your business is growing.
It is.
And you kind of try to, hang on. It's not just a kind of a side project, it's now something that and you got to be careful so that it doesn't feel like in the kind of work can be fun, right? But what I mean by it doesn't feel like work is that the bad side of work. So it doesn't feel like you're obliged to do it, and you're not like doing something like being forced to do it. Whereas,
I know
the reason why we're doing YouTube is because it's fun. It's freedom.
Yeah, we're
right?
lucky to be doing what we're doing. And I know you'll both get it. I kind of had this moment yesterday where I thought, Jesus, I've kind of worked 3 years hard to try and get to this point. And suddenly I'm getting to that point, and it's like, now I'm thinking I'm acting like a stroppy teenager. It's like, come on, pull a grip, man. Just find a way of getting your brain together and function. It's not that hard. People do a lot harder work than we do, and we're lucky to be doing what we're doing. It's something we love. It's something we enjoy. We kind of make our own timetable, our own calendars. It was just a way, and I just wanted to, I think a lot of the viewers and listeners would be interested in it, but also just hearing how you guys de-scramble your brain and how you kind of stay focused on what you need to.
Go on.
Yeah, I struggle with it. I have, like, because I've got family life, I work from home. Like we spoke about this the other day about like having a studio. It's I work when there's time to work, and I kind of don't force work on myself. Like if there's the space to work, I'll go and do it. Or like I'll just find pockets of time throughout the day to hit record, or just try and take advantage of opportunities. But the planning, like having content ideas down, has definitely helped this launch more than anything else. Like just being able to look at my notes file and see, well, this is what's coming next week. Start to get your ideas down on paper so you can go record. Or if you don't need to, just turn the camera on and record it. That's what I did for the Apple one. I just literally had the title and I hit record.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
it's hard.
I'll probably share what I've done, because this is like the 15th iteration of it, but it feels like I'm now kind of looking at what worked and what didn't work and putting into very simple. Again, even though I have a helper, she's only here 3 days a week.
I was just going to bring that up. I mean, that must be a big help, surely, right?
Especially with, having to organize it, because if it's just you kind of feel like, oh, it's in my head, it's fine. But when you've got other people, you don't, even though you're paying them, you don't want to waste their time for various reasons, right? So I think you kind of get forced again to be organized. But what I've done is very simply created a pre-production work. So research, writing the script. Because if those things don't happen, then the video will be shit, right?
Yeah.
But so knowing what needs to happen even before you press the record, for me, is really important.
Oh,
because then that
100%.
forces you again to go, hang on, if I'm doing this review about this in this location, I may as well get this other project here and record both, right? So you kind of start getting smart with the use of time. And so the production, which is basically recording the video, and then what I thought I'd do as well, and this is early days, but I think it will help me personally because I always leave the thumbnail as the last thing to do.
Same.
So I move the title and thumbnail right to pre-production work. So
That's
I
what
don't
I've
press
been doing that for a while
record
now. Yeah.
unless I have at least a concept for the thumb and the title. And ideally, I'd have at least a picture that I will use to edit later. But just moving that to the beginning helps.
I find that
the
focus
last two
helps
videos were like that.
hugely, yeah.
Because it's such an anxiety thing as well. As you're uploading, usually 99% of my videos were as soon as I press upload, I'm now working on Photoshop and Lightroom and trying to get a shot for the thumb, and it's just not a nice feel. I mean, it ruins the whole experience. And sometimes the video might actually, all that work that you put in for days might be ruined because
that shot window is so
you
important.
didn't spend enough time on title and thumb. Yeah.
So Daniel, I think you're going to say something when Alex was.
Well, I started planning now with thumbnail when I do my B-roll for the video I did on Tuesday, which was like top 5 Samsung apps. When I was shooting the B-roll for that, I made sure I positioned the phone in a certain angle and got the background to a certain nice looking aesthetic and had the folder and it had that all ready. So I knew then what the thumbnail would be. I could grab that screen grab and make it afterwards. And that helped a lot.
Yeah, I find it's worked for me without a doubt, that organisation. I think of just focusing what the actual video is going to be. If you've got that title and thumbnail locked in, it just seems to make the focus on that week's work, I don't know, a little bit more razor sharp.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into a place where, and that happened to me in December where I didn't post for a week in Brazil. And then that week became 2 weeks. And those 2 weeks became 3 weeks. And you end up in this place where, hang on, nothing happened, right? So it's like, it's fine, but it's not fine.
No.
So I think he went 2 months without a video in Brazil. And now I'm just trying to plan ahead so that there's at least something in there every other week at least.
He casually says at 95,000 subs.
I know.
Just realised.
Yeah.
But if you
Double
don't,
hundreds going on over there.
Yeah. It does get to a point where it becomes normal to be late or normal to not do it, and it just is a vicious cycle. So I think it's at least putting something on paper and seeing a list of things that you need to do helps you with, hang on, gotta push it. My challenge is, how do I drop the quality, which is honestly what I have to do sometimes to just be consistent. Because yesterday, not trying to get a tiny violin here, but I was up until 3 a.m. working on a video that I know will not perform. But I want the video, whatever it is out there with my face on it, I want it to look half decent. And it's just, maybe that's the wrong approach, or maybe it's to be more consistent. You have to be less worried about the cosmetics.
It's funny you say that. Samuel Nam, friend of the show, he messaged me this morning saying, wow, you're putting out so much content. He goes, I need to think about how I can start being more consistent, because obviously his videos are like a whole movie production.
Mega productions, yeah.
Right? He's trying to think of stuff that he can push out a bit quicker so he can get a bit more consistent uploads. And we sort of spoke about it for a bit, and I gave him some ideas and he sort of adapted his own ideas. And yeah, it's a thing like that. But that's kind of what I started, was what can be like the frictionless videos that you can put out easily, and something that's like a format that is consistent and easy to do. And I think I've kind of nailed it a little bit, but I don't know whether that eventually is going to stifle the growth that I might have, or can I keep growing in this trajectory with what I'm doing?
The thing is, we know the answer. The answer is less is more.
Yeah.
And higher quality is better for growth. Every time I publish a hero type content, or content that I spend weeks and weeks and weeks, has everything in it, has a little bit of skit, or people can see that you worked your ass off on it. Those videos yield the most views, likes, comments, engagement, subscribers. So whereas, if I'm rushing and even though I'm putting high quality content every week, I know I could do better. So if I maybe took 2 weeks to do a video, those videos would be better. But I think we're
Sam
playing
Beckman's
with
another
so many.
example.
Yeah.
He wants to come on the show, by the way. He spends like 10 days. He does a video every 10 days. But even he was talking about, how can I adapt to maybe do every 7 days to try, but his stuff as well. Like he's got you should see his studio. Oh my God. It's like a dream
his videos
factory.
are incredible. Yeah.
His videos are incredible. And he does it all himself. He's a one-man team for most of his stuff. But like he was even saying when we were at Unpack together that he's thinking about like how can he adapt to try and sort of shorten his timeline and get some more 4 videos a month instead of 3.
Again, sort of bringing in a couple of elements we've spoken about just a moment ago is the idea of passing out your editing to somebody, which sounds horrendous. And yet the argument I heard for it was if you find somebody that can edit, it's okay, they're editing, I can be recording more content. I can maybe put out 2 videos this week rather than 1. And as you said, content's king, blah, blah. So there is that argument, except of course, the downside of that is editing is your DNA. No matter how much you want somebody to make it look like you, no one's quite going to make those cuts where you feel you want to make it.
I'd rather, you could still keep that, right? With just get someone to do the first couple passes of, get the A-roll edited and add the B-roll shots in it.
Yeah.
I could add the effects and the music and all that to make it my own, or add my bits of, bit of a joke here and there and whatever. The challenge, as you say, is finding someone who's going to be reliable, not going to cost you an arm and a leg, and it's tricky.
Yeah, I mean, you got on the first step with an assistant because yesterday, I keep coming back. I don't know what it was about yesterday, but I spent so much time. I wanted to be editing, and yet I was replying to emails, and it was okay.
Yeah.
I could palm off.
It's a killer for creativity as well, right? I think it helps me a lot just to be able to say, because I use Glink for my A-roll, which is like an AI tool that does the chopping of.
You both use it, I think, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great tool, and so she's able to do that now. So that's even though it was already saving me time, she's now saving me more time by doing that bit. So I'm now teaching her how to color grade and do the audio fixing. So I think slowly, she might be able to do my entire first pass of the edit, but it takes so long, right? Especially if you're teaching someone who's never done it before, it's tricky. But I think having someone in location is always going to be better. All the creators that I admire have someone like Peter McKinnon, for example, right? He's got his right-hand man there in the studio with him.
Yeah. I mean, he's somebody that I've got huge respect for. I mean, I can't think of another creator I'll sit and watch a video about a pair of boots, but he just tells a story. And it's a lesson in just how he tells a story and makes it fun just to go with him on his journey. You want to buy into him. But
of course, I lost interest a little bit. But Andres Vidoza is another one in our niche that does sometimes even better than McKinnon's, to be honest, like movies about tech. And the latest one that he did about, I think it was a CES video, incredible. Everything, music, editing, color. But he's got someone literally holding the camera and editing. So he's I say only, right? He's creating the content, but there's someone editing it, which is great.
And Daniel, are you anywhere near? I mean, we've spoken about studio space before, and you still said, I've thought about it, but you're happy as you are. At the moment, it ain't broke, don't fix it. Are you still going to be doing everything for yourself now? Or is there a final point? Do you think maybe if I get to 100, then that's a point where I think, well, that's a tipping point. I might need help.
It's not if.
Well, yeah. So, but the if of when you're going to need help kind of thing.
I don't know. I just don't think I'd be very fun to work for. I feel like I'm not organized enough for myself, and like I'm not ready to get more organized, like juggling being a parent, being a husband, and a content creator and a football coach. Like it's just, I'm kind of happy with the situation as is. And if I can just get to a happy, content place working for myself, steady stream of income, I just don't think I need to start being responsible for other people, because then you're like, then you're not just working for your own family, right? You've got a commitment to someone else who you've hired. You've got to make sure there's enough work for them, and then that adds that extra layer of stress. I always see it when people scale like retail shops or cafes or like restaurant chains. I'm like, you're scaling too fast that maybe you're just going to struggle to keep up with what you've created. And
Very true.
I'm just happy to take it really, really slow and get to a
Same.
point where
I had that.
I'm comfortable in my own pace. And then maybe if I need to, if I've got a second part of the business that I want to introduce, that someone else can sort of manage that and bring in an extra revenue stream. But at the moment, on the creative side, I'm happy to leave with myself.
I had that 100%. Sorry, I was at that 100%. I just going to say what you just said there. At that 100%, I had a print business with a factory press, and I was doing it all myself. Then I decided, well, that press is sitting there. On the times that I'm not there, I need to get somebody in to run it. So then I ended up getting 2 minders in, and I ended up all I was doing was making sure there was food on their table, and not paying myself a salary. And kind of like, that's not really the idea of it. So yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, I was going to say that most of the people who do this really well have managed to kind of turn it around so that the output basically doubles, right? Because you're not doing some of the work. But the one thing, and this is consistent with so many people I talk to who are now full time, they all say the same thing: to have and I think Kyle kind of mentioned it last week as well, or last episode, to have a safety net of some sort, because that will give you some freedom. So and that can be different for different people. But if you say you've got 6 months worth of all your bills covered, that might be the time to go for this next few months. I would just hire an editor and whatever and try to expand then, because you don't want to run the risk of like worrying about other people, right? But if you've got a safety net, then that might be an opportunity. And I might try that this year, just to go, I now have given, this full-time thing a proper go. It would be nice to kind of, to see if it would work. Because if I double my output, would that really mean doubling the income? And I'm not sure if that's true yet.
There was other things I was going to talk about, but I'm realising we're running quite long. So I think maybe the last point to bring up, is something you noticed, Alex, was about the dubbing feature in YouTube Studio now. The other points I'll hold on to for a couple of weeks. We'll talk about it then. But
yeah, I thought it was rolled out to everybody. And talking to other creators, including you guys, it seems that it's not. But if you have it on YouTube, it's under the settings on the main page on your studio, and it's under upload default. So you can now allow YouTube, and by default, they just leave it on. So your English content will be translated to whatever language they are rolling out. So someone in Spain might watch you speaking Spanish, even though you never spoke a word in your life. So I see benefit, and I have seen benefits of my content in the Brazilian channel in Portuguese being translated to English. It's actually quite funny to hear myself talking proper English for once. But on the English side of things, some creators are saying it's a dog's dinner. There are native speaking people contacting the channel saying, this is completely inaccurate, so turn it off. So I think I'm in 2 minds right now, but I might give it a go for maybe a week or 2 and see if people complain. Yeah. Also, whenever there's a new feature, I think the recommendation is use it, right? Because YouTube might be actually pushing your content with that feature. And the fact that, if you have it, usually it's like an experimental thing. If you had like Shorts when you first came out, most of us missed that boat. But it's one of those things that it might not hurt to try, but just be aware that, some languages may complain.
Until you told me about it, I wasn't even aware it was there. Then just before we start recording, you showed me where it was in the studio, and it's like, but then what you just said
on YouTube, as a viewer, you can now watch, like I was watching a German content reviewer. She's actually a very good reviewer. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen her before, mostly because all her content is in German. So she's got it on, and I was watching her in English, and it was fine.
Maybe that's been some of the uptick. I was telling you guys, there's definitely been an uptick in people that are coming to the channel at the moment and watching old content. Maybe that's got a factor in it.
There's got to be something in languages, because obviously, people go to extreme, like me with the Brazilian channel, creating a complete separate channel just for that language, or if you go to the very extreme of people actually hiring people who speak like they have their same voices, hiring voice actors.
Mr. Beast does that, doesn't he?
Exactly. There's quite a few doing it now, where they're not dubbing, or they are dubbing, but they're actually hiring humans to do it, not AI generated stuff. So I think there's definitely merit in doing it. I've always, as part of my upload schedule, my upload sort of process
Subtitles.
is to turn on, I think I've got 25 languages in subtitles. And that's a 15, 20 minutes per video that you add to the process. But I always think, because in my data, I can see that people do turn those things on. The other one is TV. More and more people, and actually YouTube now, I think only this week, released something about people watching a lot more from TVs now. So if you're
going to pivot away from... so you're going to pivot away from your... Because you've shrunk your videos down to fit the mobile. You're going to go back to 16:9?
I'm not sure, because it actually looks good on the telly too. I mean, most tellies are a bit wider than... they're not as tall, right, as an iPhone, as any phone. But YouTube seems to be behind on that, because they want us to do almost like 4:3 or 16:9, and it's like,
and interestingly,
I don't know, most mobile phones are so much taller, like 21:9 now. You know, it's
playing into our hand here on the podcast is, of course, most of the people that watch stuff on television are watching long form. I think it's anything over 22 minutes or something. They notice that's the tipping. Over 20 minutes, people are going to the TV.
Yeah, I've been very conscious of this for a while now. Yeah, because in the data, it's like almost 20% of my views are from telly. It's like a lot. That's so all my videos, if I mention a link, I'm like, how are you going to click on the link on a telly? You can't. So you have to put a QR code or something. Yeah.
You can send the link to the phone. Oh, you mean like in the description or something?
You have to use the TV remote, which is shit, and then you kind of get 15 clicks to get to the description.
You were about to say something about the TV, weren't you, Daniel?
I was going to say, my wife and I watched the video today, 56-minute YouTube video.
There you go,
the TV,
long form again.
I watched you, Daniel, on your Sam Mobile thing on the TV. I was like, that feels weird, because you tried a different angle. I think it was a sitting down angle or something.
It's this one I'm doing right now, actually, but the camera's a bit further back. But yes, with the TV.
No, it's really, I mean, on a big telly, it does give you... It does, I don't know, it came across more inviting and cozy. I don't know what it was. It was nice.
Yeah, I do that for Sam Mobile. I sit down and stand up for mine. Anyway.
Well, that time has absolutely flown. I say the fact we've got things, the things that was in stuff we've
Joe
got
Rogan on this 3-hour podcast.
And again, I know Alex said it at the top, but everyone that's joining on and getting involved and talking and commenting and subscribing, of course, it really does help us out. So we've got lots still to talk about. So we're definitely back in a couple of weeks' time. I know we've both all been talking about guests coming on as well, and I'll just mention
we do have a
guest
finished.
And I've got somebody almost ready. I'll mention you in just a minute. Fantastic, guys. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching, viewing. And if you're listening on Apple, we're supposed to say this as well. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. Apparently helps us as well with our finds and getting up the rankings and so on. And we should be ranked. Come on. This is gold dust, what we get out here.
It's about time.
It's about time. So we'll be back in 2 weeks' time, guys. Thanks as ever.
Thank you all.
See you guys.